Good afternoon YouTube, Ian here from Coolice Charge Cases and Power Supplies. I hope you are all safe and well in these still very uncertain times. Obviously thank you again to the NHS and the healthcare system all over the world for the help and support they're giving to obviously people that are suffering with COVID-19. Your efforts are greatly appreciated by everyone in this world, so please keep up the good work, and hopefully we'll all be on the right side of this as soon as we can. Anyway, on to other things. I hope I'm actually framing my face a little bit better in the middle of my camera, because normally I chop the top of my head off or something silly like that, but I'm a bit more conscious of it now, so let's hope so. But anyway, as you guys have come to expect from me, every now and then obviously I come back to you with a charge case video of one of the latest cases I've been building. There is one actually I've already done, and I've got it in my phone. Using a quad, it was a quad ISCT Q8 build, and I still haven't put it together, which I must do. But anyway, it's been very busy for me, which is very nice. Thank you very much to all my customers and potentially all my future customers that are watching these videos that I post. Your custom is greatly appreciated, and I look forward to perhaps building you a charge case. But anyway, without further ado, let's talk about the one I've got now in front of me, which is going to go out tomorrow. This customer is a UAV operator, MightySky. They approached me and said, Ian, we've already seen one of your cases. In this case, it was Ben's from the Flying Camera Company, which is also already in my YouTube videos from memory. Those of you that might have seen it will have noticed that it was a Riva Electrics build in that instance. So it was a twin PL8 build with a Riva Electrics bump controller to control the two chargers, and the chargers were hidden under the deck, which is good, which is great. And this case that I'm going to show you in a minute follows suit, but slightly different chargers. This one's now using an iCharger 4010 rather than Riva Electrics. So, but anyway, back to Ben's case. That one, he wanted the ability to be able to close the lid when the batteries were charging. Now, not because he specifically wanted to charge with the lid closed, but because of his work, he's a UAV company again, if the case was charging outside and of course it started to rain, which in the UK is quite normally, quite regular, although today it's very hot and sunny, it's quite warm in here. He wanted to also be able to close the lid and obviously save the chargers and the bump controller and of course the lipos from getting wet. So that was not a problem. I designed a deck that obviously dropped the Riva Electrics MPA boards and obviously the bay area of where the batteries were going to go by a further 10 mil. As there was nothing in the lid of that case, I had the full depth of the lid. Combined with this additional 10 mil meant that the large capacity UAV batteries would obviously fit on the deck while charging, and the lid could be closed. So that worked out brilliant. In light of that then, of course, that case obviously with the extractor fans, or should I say extraction cooling fans, I created a 3D printed holder that mounted them on the back of the case itself, with 3D printed vents or shrouds on the outside that basically were deflecting the air downwards, that was obviously then being drawn out of the case. So again, while the case isn't waterproof as such, it would rainproof. So if it did rain, the rain would ultimately roll off the top of the shrouds, the outlet vent shrouds, and just drop on the ground. Likewise then, the air inlet slots, potentially if the lid was going to be closed, we still needed to allow air in somehow. So I created the vents that obviously you'll see on this case again are mounted in between the strengthening ribs of the case itself. So they allow cool fresh air to be pulled in by the fans that are mounted in the case, and then obviously then the warmed air then is obviously thrown out the back. I'm going to see if I can just turn my arm down there and still keep pointing the camera at my face because my arm is aching. Anyway, this case follows that same sort of logic, really. It's still got the same cooling fan outlets. It's got the same air inlets vents, which I'll show you again in a minute. it actually has the same waterproof AC connector as well. Again, this one came from RS Components. Not a cheap product, give or take around the £35 mark, I think, but it's waterproof. When it's connected, there's obviously O-rings that obviously create a watertight seal between the connector and the receptacle on the charge case. So if it rains, you're not gonna have any problems with the 240 volts going into it, because you certainly don't want to be messing around with mains 240 volt and water. This customer though, MightySky, they requested to have their logo built into the deck. Oh, sorry, built into the lid. Sorry, not the deck. So they showed me an idea that they'd seen. Obviously, I'd already done similar. So I said, yeah, that's not a problem. We can make that. We weren't going to the expense or the time, added time to create a full lid build. So again, I kept it, the design in the lid basically is just a logo holder, into which then obviously there's a strip of LEDs to edge lit the laser engraved logo on the piece of 5mm acrylic. I then wanted to create a nice wire guide if you like, because of course I needed to take 12 volt up to this strip of LED. So I come up with a nice little design which I actually think looks quite nice. It looks smart, it looks high tech. And then obviously terminates in my cable chain, which I quite like to use because I think it looks good, which then it's a little bit overkill perhaps, being 10 by 20mm again cable chain, because there's only two thin 12 volt wires going through it, but it still looks good and adds that finishing touch to the case, and it will make a bit more sense when I show it to you. Now then, due to obviously the logo being in the lid and that being machined from 10mm polypropylene, and again I've lost 10mm of depth in the lid, so I needed to get that back somehow on the deck design. So what I did, where with Ben's case before I dropped the charging bay or battery bays as I call it 10mm, I dropped this case design 20mm. Now that wasn't, it took me a little while to figure out how to do it quickly, but in the end I figured out that I could create the spacing hoops, as I would call it, although they're rectangular hoops, on the router, but break each individual part. So I create the full part. So I've got the top half, the top section, the bottom section, then the two straights that connect, and create almost like a jigsaw puzzle out of them, so that they can obviously be pushed together and they kind of interlock within reason. And then of course then when they're sandwiched between the main deck and the secondary deck, because I've created two decks, the main one obviously, which you'll see in a minute, which is covered by carbon film, and then the main lower deck, if you like, that creates the sub level that the batteries sit on, and of course then is separated by the two rounds of these 10mm spacers, so 2 times 10mm, 20mm depth increase overall. I then created obviously on the deck openings then to suit the biggest size battery that they may eventually want to go and use. So I've created allocated space, if you like, for 2 pairs of charging lipos. I have already missed out, this is an iCharger 4010 Duo, so there's 2 channels of this charger. So you've got the one channel on the left, second channel on the right, and then of course then you've got lipo battery bays, or battery bay on the left and a battery bay on the right. Within those bays then I wanted to create obviously the charging points. They're using EC5, so very easy. The 2 main charging points needed to be EC5, that's fine. And then I wanted to put the ability to connect the balance port. Now, the iCharger 4010 Duo cannot, of course, do up to 10S. There aren't many small form factor 10S charge boards around. So I spoke to my electronics guy, the guy behind the ice meter, Steve Smith, and said, Steve, I'm looking for a charge board that looks like this, can you help? And his response, as normal with me, is yes I can, let me figure this out, because it's not just a simple matter of running copper traces here, there and everywhere, due to the amount of balance pins that are available and the amount of JST-XH connectors that are going to be on this board to cover charging lipos from 2 to 10S, it can get quite crowded. And to his credit, that man's a genius. He's done really well on the design of this PCB, and within 2 weeks I had 10 delivered, and they're great. You'll see, you can't really see too much at the moment from the video that I'm going to show you, but at the end of this video obviously I'll append a load of pictures again of this build, so it'll show a lot more about this charge board that he created for me. And then of course I've hand soldered up with, because it's also got 2 fuses on the main charge ports, so the main positive and negative. The positive obviously has got a fuse on it, so if there's a short on the main battery lines, it kills the fuse. There is also then 11 polyfuses, resettable polyfuses on between each of the balance pins and the balance connection wire going then back to the charger. So if there's a short on the balance charging side of things, that way then obviously the charger is protected. And again, obviously that's good, because the plan was with the idea being to charge 2 batteries per channel of the charger. You've got the ability then to obviously safeguard the 2 lipos that are going to be connected in parallel to the charger that is obviously then going to charge them as one big capacity pack. But in this case, I think they're currently flying 6S packs, so they may never ever use 10S, but they've got the ability to. So we've done that. The iCharger 4010, because I wanted to drop the deck down by an additional 20mm, that brought about another issue in that there wasn't, and also due to the size of the lipos admittedly, there wasn't the space on the deck for me to have my regular cutout or machined pocket on the back for the 4010 Duo to sit within, and then obviously be held in place with my usual 3D printed holders. So I had to figure out a way to, or basically I wanted to extend the screen and the buttons in this case. The screen's easy. I've already seen people on the various forums, and you can obviously buy the ribbon cable for it, and you can also then buy the spare ribbon cable that connects the buttons to the main board of the iCharger 4010. But at this point I hadn't seen any longer ones other than the standard one, which I think is about 6 centimeters long, and I needed one that was going to be at least 20 centimeters, so 200 millimeters long. So took a little bit of messing around, but I found them again on RS Components and ordered some, and then from China then as well, some interlinking, I think they're ZF ribbon cable joiners. So I've got quite a few here now actually, but that'll be handy for any future projects. So what I did then, I went to the Fusion 360 and designed the basically almost like the middle section of the iCharger 4010, so I could then 3D print the screen holder and the button holder using the 3D printer excuse me, which I could then remote mount into the middle of the deck between these 2 previously mentioned battery bays, and then connect back to the main board of the charger using this slightly longer ribbon cable. And it's worked quite well. I'm really pleased with how it's worked out. Again, talking about it doesn't really say too much, but when you see it, it will all sink into place, and there'll be again the photos at the end of the video that will show the back side of it and the design work that's got into it. So basically I've managed to keep the ability to flip the screen up at an angle using the same setup that was found on the standard charger. So you can obviously pull it up, and obviously then it iCharger users have heard it's got the little clicking action, so it'll click and hold itself up. And then below that is the buttons to obviously control the 2 sides of the charger. The only thing I haven't done yet, and you'll see missed in this video, is I need to create a little legend label just to denote what each of the buttons are, and I'm planning on doing that in a minute before I button it up and package it up in the box, but I haven't done that yet. So that obviously then allowed me then to mount the charger on the sub level deck, which is 30mm. Obviously I've got the two 10mm, so 20mm of spacer depth, and then obviously an additional 10mm for the lower polypropylene deck as well. So basically I've made like a sandwich of two decks, if you like. The top one is the main size to fit the case, and the bottom one is slightly smaller size because I didn't need to make it so big. And then obviously that is then clamping between the main deck and it, 20mm worth of spacer to create the lower deck level. Again, photographs at the end will probably explain it better than I can in voice. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to turn it around so I can start showing you the case. I hope I haven't pressed anything in the inside. No, I haven't. Right, so I've already got the lid open. I should probably close it actually, and we'll start from thing. I need to give it a quick wipe. But anyway, obviously on the outside, we've got my usual, and it's upside down because I always do it that way so that when the lid is open, it reads the right way up when people see it. So that's the main lid. We've got obviously, how many is there? There's 4, 8, oh, there's 10. There's 10 screws, obviously, that are visible. They're the mushroom head type, so they're obviously below or the same level as the strengthening ribs on the lid. So that's handy, and they're black. Is it self-coloured, I think they call it? So they blend in quite nice. That's holding the logo in the lid. It's come down. So there's one of the vents out the 4. I've got 4, and obviously, as you can see, they're in the strengthening ribs of the case itself, so they're sitting below the level line, so they're not going to get hit. There's another one on the side, and they're basically mirrored. So one on the right side, front one on the right, front one on the left, and then another front one on the left side. Going back to the right, we've got the AC socket that I was explaining about. It's got its own little dust cover as well, which I've partially left off. I'll try and plug this in by hand now. This is the waterproof plug I was talking about. You can just about see if it focuses yet. It's got the O-rings in there. So if I pop that in, it might need 2 hands because it's a proper little clip. Yep, it is. So it probably needs a good shove on it to engage it. Oh, and then once it's in, sorry about that, I accidentally pressed the wrong button on my phone. But anyway, we're back in. Anyway, with the AC in, once it's in, you can't just pull it out. You literally need to pull the outer ring or the outer casing of it, and it's kind of like spring loaded almost. So that kind of like releases the clip, and then obviously it pulls out. And I won't try and do that while I'm holding the phone because it could get a little bit messy. Anyway, AC in. I can probably show you around the back quick as well. Yeah, there we go. So there's the outside shrouds, hoods for the cooling fans that mount at the back of the case, and of course then they are sitting below the rib line of the case, so they're protected as well from being knocked. And this case is a wheeled one, which is quite nice because it is going to be a little bit heavy, and of course it's got the retractable handle then there as well then for them to pull that along when need be. So let me just slide it back across. People see my soldering irons at the same time, and probably the state of my workbench. I need to make a bigger area. Let's open this up, show you the deck. Right, and now this obviously paints a better picture of what I was trying to describe. So basically, as you can see, we'll start with the most obvious bits first. There's the 20mm, or actually it's 30mm actually, because you've got the main deck as 10, then 20, 30. You've got an additional 2 layer sandwich on there, so that creates obviously the 30mm lower deck, and they're wide enough then to obviously have one light. The plan is to have one LiPo here, and then obviously it's got its charger connections here. This is a joined board underneath, and this is what I was explaining earlier. So there you've got all the balance ports for 2 to 10S and then EC5, and under here you've got fuse going to the positive, fuse on this side, fuse on this side. And then obviously you've got various polyfuses as well on the underside of this, but obviously on the inside of the case. So the photos from the rear will show that. That's then secured in. And then obviously created another support bar as well that runs underneath the EC5 and the board, and then is obviously supported with my usual blind inserted M5 inserts in there. So that obviously as you're pushing the EC5s in, you're not putting pressure on the PCB. It's being reinforced, if you like, by a controlling bar or a strengthening bar. So we've obviously got those two channels are in parallel on this side, so that's channel 2, and then obviously we've got a replication of obviously on this side as well on the left, which is channel 1. And again, the charge board is there. The underside photos will show that quite nicely. Then we come across to the middle. This is what I was explaining about with the iCharger. So basically I've kind of replicated the face as best as possible, and it's worked out really well. I've literally just taken the screen apart and put it in place, so we can obviously have that and angle it as required. And it's obviously got the ribbon cable then that goes back through a channel that I've created in the 3D printed housing, and obviously then connects to the main button and LCD PCB, which is under here. And then obviously from here then goes down via another ribbon cable, and I've got spare ones. I can show you one here in the packet. It should hopefully come out, or I can pull it out. Figured out how many pins the ribbon cable needed and ordered it. So we've got something like that, which obviously then, so I've got one of these then connected to the back of the ribbons. Should I say not the ribbon? I've got another one of these ribbon cables connected from the buttons and the screen module here into one of the splicing or connector adapters here, and then on the other side then I've got another 20 centimeter length then, which I've obviously already mounted in the main guts of the charger, and then screwed the two case halves back together. So I've just basically extended it by about 40 centimeters with a joiner in the middle. So if we do need to separate the screen again from the main charger, we're not having to mess around too many times with the ribbon cable connectors on the screen or the main charge board itself, which can obviously wear out over time. So that obviously avoids issues there. So this is the only thing I've got to do really. I've got to write the little legend, which I'm going to stick just under here, so of course then they can just navigate to the buttons. Once you get used to them, you know which one does what. But I didn't obviously mess around trying to put tiny text into the 3D printed part, apart from the channel 1 and channel 2, and that looks, but it looks quite nice. It's obviously 10mm depth, so it just sinks into the cutout, and of course then it's got the 4 fixing holes, 2 at the bottom, 2 at the top, again using the M5 brass inserts then, so it's screwed in properly in the back, and that works quite nice. I'll turn that on in a minute and then you can see that. Usual fixings for the deck, nothing too out of the ordinary there compared to what I've done before. Coming up, also got the usual USB, twin USB port there, which is handy, cable chain, and then as we go up higher then you can start to see what I wanted to do then with the logo. So let's fan out, and there we go. It just fills the lid. We didn't want to go too much within the lid because obviously we also need the lid depth to accommodate the height of the battery sitting in the bay, so we didn't want to go too far, but a nice logo in there, which is what we've done, MightySky, and obviously that's edge lit, which you should hopefully be able to see when I turn it on. And then of course then the interconnecting bit, as you can see, there's only 2 wires. They're only 2 thin, I think it's 22 gauge wire, a positive and negative. Just take 12 volt up from the buck converter that I've got connected, because this charger is 50 volt capable. It's got one of the L-Tech rectifiers in there set to 49 volts, so I used a buck converter then to drop 49 volts down to 12 volts, so I can run the 2 cooling fans within the case, and obviously then 12 volts then up straight to the LED strip. And indeed this morning actually I've just been monitoring to make sure that the buck converter doesn't get too hot, just to be on the safe side, and it doesn't. It does obviously run warm, the little coil on it, but it's not out of the ordinary for that, so that's working quite nice. So I took my previous cable chain design and added then the little spigot, if you want to call it that, on top, and then put a hole in for 10mm, and then obviously cut a little piece of carbon fibre tubing. Then the logo outline, obviously it's got the little cutout, it's got the additional little bump in the middle section of it here then, which another 3D printed part then obviously screws onto, and obviously then there's screws on the other side of these. So these are, I think these are only about 6mm thick, so they penetrate into the polypropylene about 2 or 3mm, and then some more screws on the back. So obviously that holds the tube then at the top, tube at the bottom, and then I've basically got a cable chain guide then for the wiring. And it looks nice and neat. It looks quite high tech with a little section of carbon in there. Looks pretty, functional, does the job. So I'm really pleased with that. Overall, this case has turned out really well. I tell you what, without pressing the buttons again and stopping the video, let me turn it on. Normally takes a few seconds for the power supply just to come online. And there we go. And the camera's always a bit difficult to see, capture the light, but you can obviously see then, because obviously the logo is laser etched. So there's a mix there again. Also, we've got the CNC routed polypropylene, which has just basically got a rectangular shape pocket cut out the back of it, and then of course then the outer shape of the logo cut in, and then obviously then I've got the LED edge lit acrylic panel then, which obviously sits in it, and then obviously then that's with the MightySky logo, and then that catches the light from the LED strip and shines up nice. It's very difficult to catch him via video, but it does work. And of course then the white of the polypropylene as well, it does give quite a nice little effect again, which I think I have highlighted in some of my other videos, where the light is going into the polypropylene, it then glows it glows the white edges up quite nice. It just makes a little bit of a frame there really, which is quite nice. So it just all adds to the effect. Pan back down, and as you can see, we've got the usual iCharger screen. Don't know why I'm showing that. Anyone who's had use of an iCharger Duo knows just how well they work, and these colour screens are brilliant. I do like these. It's the only counter argument you can have really for the bump controllers. The bump controller adds wireless ability, as well as obviously the colour touchscreen to interface. But yeah, this all works. So we can obviously go in. I've not really set up anything in here. I've just been using the first LiPo one. No point in doing anything because it's going to complain. Wrong button. We'll come out of it. And there we go. Should have power to the USB, which we have. Put that back in. And there we go. Fans are running. They're 70-33s, I think, on this one. So they're not quite as big as what I have used in some other cases, but there's quite a lot of airspace within this case. So, and they do, because it's quite sealed actually, they do pull still quite a lot of air coming out the back with the two of them running. The power supply as well is very efficient and doesn't run very hot considering either. It doesn't create a lot of heat even when under full load, so they are very well designed, those Eltec units. And again, employing one of Steve Smith's power PCB that he designed for me to use with them, so it works quite nice. So as a parting shot, I can just pan over and then say, well, thank you for watching. Thank you to MightySky for choosing me to build them their charge case. Hopefully they've got another couple of ideas in the pipeline which I'll get involved in, which would be quite nice, and hopefully then you guys might see it then as well when I take videos and post it on YouTube. Anyway, it's goodbye for me for now. Take care of yourself, stay safe, and if you need any charge cases or power supplies, give me a shout. Ian at Coolice Charge Case and Power Supplies. Take care of yourself. Bye bye.